A lot of readers have a problem wherein their owned TBR is way too big. I am no exception. Here's the difference. While my owned physical TBR is a little out of control, the thing that is truly beyond repair out of control is my Kindle TBR, because I have over 800 unread books in my Kindle library. So every 2 months, I'm going to be working through a couple of them to feel like I'm making some progress on dealing with this issue. Hello humans, it's just Martine, and welcome to another episode of Kindle Clear Out. I decided to be kind to myself at the start of this year and make this month's theme short stories. Several months last year when I went to pick my Amazon first reads, they were like, hey, you can get a bonus short story for free. And so of course I did, because that's how much self-control I have for free books. And they've recently stopped doing that and just kept a short story as like one of your options on first reads. And I'm not about to waste my entire month's first reads credit on a like 25-page short story, but when they're free, I snatch them up. So I feel like this would be a really easy, quick way to clear through a couple of my unread Kindle books. So I'm going to be reading 6 short stories, and at the end of this, we'll still have over 800 unread books in my Kindle library, but there will be 6 less of them. So let's go. The first short story that I read for this is When We Were Friends by Jane Green. And it's so hard to tell you what short stories are about because by the time I describe it, like that's the whole thing. We're following this woman. She randomly becomes friends with this other woman one day, and we follow their friendship and what happens in it. Like, that's the whole thing. It's only 44 pages, and I'm giving it 3 stars. At first, I thought it was set up so that I would like it. I enjoy stories about friendships. I could tell there was something sinister about this friendship. However, the writing style just fell a little flat for me, and it was almost like the writing style changed. Like, we had this setup, and then the writing style just got way more, I'm going to rush through things now, which was weird. But since it was 44 pages, like I'm not mad that I read it. You know, if this story had been longer, it wouldn't have been very good. But because it was short, it was fine. And I think that's the interesting thing about these short stories is how many of them am I going to read and be like, yeah, you're right, that shouldn't be a full novel. Probably most of them. Also, in general, I'm kind of worried for this whole video because pretty much all of the Amazon original short stories that I've read up until this point have just been mid, so me fears they're going to all be that way, but I guess we'll have to see. So that's one more book read and off my Kindle though, which is a huge win. I have finished reading The Answer Is No by Frederick Bachman, which we could already predict it was going to be a good short story because it's by Frederick Bachman, and Frederick Bachman tends to write, well, not always, but has written shorter things before, not like this short that has been published that I know of, but like generally pretty short stuff sometimes. Anyway, I gave this one 4 stars. And if I had to make a prediction, this is probably going to be my favorite of the group. There was just something I loved about this so much. Okay, so in this one, we're following this dude. I already forget his name because I finished this last night. That's okay. And his whole thing is that he hates people, like doesn't want anything to do with them, so he spends all his time in his apartment avoiding people. And one day he can no longer do that because people are knocking at his door about this frying pan that has been left on the sidewalk outside of the apartment building. And this is not his problem, but somehow it becomes his problem, and so he just keeps interacting with more and more people, and we see what that does for a person who hates other people, which like is a big MO of Frederick Bachman. Frederick Bachman loves to write a character who hates the world. This is one of those characters. So I adored him. I think it had good commentary about the difference between loneliness and being alone. I felt like there were some really quirky characters that just made me laugh. Like it felt so ridiculous. There were like these 3 characters who always traveled together and like spoke together and were part of the same group. And so the main character kind of viewed them as like a singular entity and like an animal with 3 heads, which was really funny because they were actually just like 3 people, but the way this character like conceptualized the world was so weird and I loved it. I think it also had good commentary about like the power of social influence and all those things and how people solve problems or don't solve them as the case may be, because a lot of times the main character is like, let me solve this problem. And then people are like, but no, that's not the way we wanted you to solve the problem. So that's always interesting to think about. Humanity is weird and wacky and wonderful and also terrible all at once. And I think this short story kind of captured that and it just made me giggle. So I liked this one. The next short story for this was Natural Selection by Ellen Hilderbrand, and I'm giving it 3.5 stars. It was pretty good. It's a weird setup. So we're following this woman, and she and her boyfriend are about to go on vacation to the Galapagos Islands, and it's not her pick. It's like very much his pick. He's like, let's go to the Galapagos Islands. And she's like, you're paying, so okay. And they get to the airport to take their connecting flight to the Galapagos Islands, and he gets a call and he's like, there's an emergency back home, because he's previously been married and he has kids. So he's like, I've got to go. And she's like, okay, let's leave then. I guess we're not going to the Galapagos Islands. And he's like, no, you go. Here's my camera. You go, take pictures. I'm gonna leave though. So he leaves and she goes on this trip all by herself, and he kind of falls off the map. He's like not replying, and she's trying to figure out what's happening while also experiencing the Galapagos Islands. So it's a very weird short story in that way. But I generally enjoyed it. I feel like the plot twist was not that surprising or that interesting, really. But the setting, I think, made up for it. It was interesting to read about this trip to the Galapagos. I enjoyed the group of people she was traveling with. I felt like the atmosphere was good. So yeah, 3.5 stars. Pretty good time. I'm here to talk to you about Falling Down, which I did not care about in the slightest. I gave it 2 stars, and I feel like any description I give to you of this book will just be the whole thing. So here's the thing. I think short stories can work well. I've rated other short stories in this very vlog better than this one. Here's why this one was different. So this is technically the first installment in a serialized novel, and I've even seen that done better than this. Because even when you split it into a bunch of short stories, there should be a point of each segment. It shouldn't just be pointlessly ending somewhere. There should be a mini plot within it, right? There was no mini plot in this one. It was just set up for the larger story, and it did not hook me well enough for me to continue this story either. Like, there's no reason for this to be a short story. I want there to be a reason for it to be a short story instead of just a chapter in a book. And it felt like there was no reason, except maybe for Amazon to make money, but that doesn't even really make sense because all of their short stories are available on KU anyway. That's not how I got this one. I got this as like a first reads book. But regardless, there was just no point. There was no point. In this, we're following this group of guys who I could not tell them apart to save my life because I got 30 pages with them and there are like 7 of them maybe. They're on this Black Ops mission doing something, I guess, when their plane goes down in a snowy mountain, and a bunch of them die and several of them are injured, and they retreat to this weird structure that they see, and like that's it. We obviously know something's going to happen in this structure later. It's a series of horror short stories. But like there was no point. There was simply no point. And I had a lot of trouble paying attention. And I think if it takes me 21 minutes to read something and it is 30 pages long, I should not be fighting for my life to pay attention the whole time. That should be an easy thing to pay attention to. But no. So yeah, didn't really care about this one. It didn't offend me, which is why it's not getting lower than a 2 stars. But I didn't care, and I won't be continuing on. And if you see me continuing on, assume that something is wrong with me. Glad that that's done, and glad it was so short, because if I had to keep reading that, I wouldn't have enjoyed it. So that's on that. Next read, Lovers at the Museum. This one's real short, 25 pages, and unlike my last read, it felt short, but it still felt like it was whole. It was what it was supposed to be. So I gave this 4 stars. The main genre I feel like this belongs to is magical realism, but I had trouble narrowing it down because so much was happening in such a short period of time. This one is basically following this detective who one day he gets called into the Guggenheim, and they're like, there are 2 people, apparently they've been here overnight and they shouldn't be. And so he's trying to figure out what happens, and so he's like talking to the people who found them. He's talking to the individuals themselves and trying to get the story about like what happened, and particularly some of the weird things, like why none of the guards noticed them, for instance. Really simple, but I felt like it was effective. I just think the writing was good. Like that's what I enjoyed about this. The writing was good. I saw all the characters like very clearly. I mean, I didn't actually see them because I don't imagine when I read, but the descriptions were very strong. I just enjoyed this one. 4 stars, way better than the last one. Final short story for this video. I read Tiger Chair by Max Brooks. Now, I've wanted to read a book by Max Brooks for a long time because I want to read World War Z, but I have not yet read anything by this author. So I guess now that's not true. Now I've read this. And I'm giving this short story 3.5 stars. It was a little longer than the past, like 2 short stories because it was 50 pages. So basically like double the length of Lovers at the Museum. It's hard to explain what this book is about because I'm not sure I fully got it. You could be like, but 3.5 stars, you clearly enjoyed it well enough. What do you mean you don't know what it's about? It's set in the future during this war, and it's told as a letter that is going from one person to his friend and has, like, I guess you could consider it treasonous materials in it. He's fighting in this war and he wants people to know what's actually happening inside of this war and what it's costing the people who are fighting it and also the people who are not fighting it. I think in the beginning it was hard to get into, but the message by the end of the story was interesting to me about the costs of war and power and all of those things. So I at least appreciated that. I was really waffling between giving it a 3 and a 3.5 stars, but there were a couple quotes that I was just like, that hit just right. So 3.5 stars. I'm calling it. Ratings are fake anyway. I don't think it's going to dissuade me from reading World War Z, but it also, I think, doesn't make World War Z a 5-star prediction, if that makes sense. So yeah, I would still be interested to see what this author does in a long-form story. We did it! 6 more books read from my Kindle library, clearing out the Kindle. Haha, just a little at a time. Let's see, should I rank these? I'm not going to make a graphic because I am lazy. Let's see. My favorite was definitely The Answer is No by Frederick Bachman, followed by my other 4-star, which was Lovers at the Museum. And then I had, I think, 2 3.5 stars. I had Natural Selection. I think that's my number 3 pick. And then I had Tiger Chair, which is my number 4. In 5th place, I have, what's the one I gave 3 stars? When We Were Friends. And then at the bottom of the pack, Falling Down, because I did not like that one. So, overall, not a terrible batch of stories. I had a good time, and quick reads are always helpful, and I really needed them this month because I've just read a lot less this month, and that's totally okay, but to get this video done, short stories were the way to go. So, on that note, I'm going to end this vlog here. If you'd like to go ahead and give it a big thumbs up and comment down below. Do you have any goals for working through your unread Kindle books in the new year? And subscribe for more bookish and college lifestyle content. And until next time, bye humans, bye!